This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Welcome to the NBA Team Podcast. We are finally in the NBA playoffs. This is the first round preview. A lot of people feel like this is when the season really begins now after a really non-competitive last couple of months of the regular season that has gotten Adam Silver in a lot of hot water with a lot of people. But this is the one I assume where everybody plays, but it depends on how superstars are feeling about their teams and how competitive they want to be. I am one of your co-hosts, Andrew Riche. I'm joined by Adam Murray. Adam, do you feel like the first round is when the season really begins at this point? I know that it felt like that for a long time with a lot of fans because just the intensity, the competitiveness picks up. You can see that in the play-in for sure because those were do or die games. But does it feel like the seriousness of winning the games and the strategy and playing through injury mainly is like paramount in the playoffs once you get to the first round?
Well, we have the plan, which my feelings have been well known on it.
Yeah, the games, I'll say this, some of the games are very good. Charlotte,
the games are
Miami's
exciting
wild
because they're evenly matched and they're trying. Mm-hmm. When you have crappy teams who are playing G League 10-dayers as starters, okay, that's all over. So you have the Charlotte and Miami and even Golden State. They're trying. They're putting effort in. But
Portland and Phoenix, they both wound up in the playoffs anyway because Phoenix lost at home, but then they beat the Warriors. We'll talk about the Warriors' future down the road.
It doesn't mean they're good teams, though.
But it was a good game, so I did enjoy watching the intensity of the game.
Having competitive basketball as opposed to watching the Wizards stroll out there and just be like, I'm not going to even try. But anywho, like you said, this is the part where people start caring, people start tuning in. I say it's the first round, and for the most part, we usually blow through five game series on most of these.
For the most part, usually the likelihood of a series in the first round ending in 7 games, historically, I'm pretty sure that we've on a yearly basis only one goes 7 games. Last year, I think it was the Nuggets and the Clippers. There was another one that went 7 games. I can't remember it off the top of my head. The year before that, I believe one of them was Orlando and Cleveland. There may have been more than one, but usually that 1 to 2 is tops in terms of 7 games. 6 games, you'll have a few of them go 6 games because sometimes these teams that aren't going to get past the first round, they are more competitive than you would think. And they have matchups that the higher seed didn't necessarily prepare well for. So there's always some surprises in the first round. But yeah, it usually does go chalk. That's true.
And with that said, let us get into your previews, because for the most part, I recall myself just going meh 5 games. I have consistency at least. So
yeah,
let's get started. Go ahead.
It's gonna be a good. I think it'll be a fairly decent slate of games. Let's just start with the Eastern Conference. So the 1 seed is the Detroit Pistons, who had the best record, and they've been they were in the playoffs last year, but this time they're the 1 seed. I would not call them front runners because they've played hard on defense all year long. Cade Cunningham got hurt with his throat, but he's back. So he'll probably be ready to go. They're going to play the Magic. They lost to Philly in the play-in, but then they absolutely massacred the Hornets at home and in the do or die game. So this is where they land. Everyone has heard about all the discontent where, some people think Paolo Banchero is overrated and that the team hates Jamal Mosley, the coach, and that he's a sitting duck. But here they are. They play good defense. Their offense has been a struggle, to say the least. Detroit, though, has a better defense than Orlando does.
I'm just going to first say Cade Cunningham is out with a throat injury, you said?
Yeah, I thought it
A
was
collapsed lung is not a throat
well,
injury.
you know what I mean. Like he got hit in the throat and it caused a
Your
collapsed lung.
lungs are in your throat. Is this Looney Tunes?
No, no,
And
no,
the
no,
heart,
no. With
he
the
has
injury,
heart beating out of his
the
chest
injury
syndrome.
occurred. If you remember, the injury occurred when Trey Johnson kicked him accidentally in the throat, and that's how the collapsed lung happened. So,
It was just fine. Like lungs and throats
but
are.
yeah, it was a collapsed lung. But he came back. He came back for the last few games of the regular season. He also won his appeal along with Luka Doncic, who's probably not going to be ready either for the playoffs, to get awards because they were a few games shy, but they won their
Rightfully
appeal.
so, but the
Yeah.
fact they had to appeal is just wrong anyway. But we're getting this. I recall just a memory just came back to me. I used to have round one, and the whole thing was my argument was, tell me why this won't be 5 games.
Yeah.
And I think this is just gonna, I mean, Orlando won because Charlotte was terrible at the end. So you have a dysfunctional team who has just underachieved all year. Maybe can they turn it on? I've bet on them too many times, so I've been burnt by them so hard. So
Mm.
how is this not going to go 5 games?
Well, for me, it's difficult to see how the one thing that Orlando does have in their favor is that they're really good at home. I mean, they showed that in the play-in. Like when they have to turn it on at home, they know how to do it. They get the benefit of the whistle. Um, they also are highly reliant in terms of like whether they play at their peak of whether or not Jalen Suggs plays well. Because if Suggs doesn't score or he doesn't shoot the ball well, they're doomed. Because now you're just down to Desmond Bain, Franz Wagner, who's been injured all year, and he has a good game followed by a bad game, and then Banchero, who I still think, regardless of all the hate, I do think Paulo Banchero is an awesome NBA player. Some people think he sucks and that he's overrated. I think that it's just a bad fit in terms of the way the offense is run, but he I do think he's a really good player. He will give some problems to Detroit because they're going to probably have to put some bigger guys on him like Isaiah Stewart, maybe even Paul Reed sometimes just to get him out of the paint so that Durant doesn't get in foul trouble. The problem is I can't see Orlando winning any of those games in Detroit. If they do, it would be because Detroit just shot the ball really poorly and they got the yips. But I just see a 5-game series here where Detroit wins.
Very good. Moving on, we have the 2 versus the 7 Boston Celtics
Mm.
versus the Joel Embiid-less Philly 76ers.
Look, well,
So again,
before
yes.
we do our prediction, I'll say this. Even with Joel Embiid out, I probably would have had the same prediction anyways. Not saying that Philly was doomed. I just think that Philly's ceiling is just as high without Embiid as it is with him. Some people won't agree with that because some people think that you need to have a guy like Embiid who averages, let's be fair, he averages like 27 points games, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. Like he's still an elite player when he gets his minutes and he's healthy. He played 38 games, but I think without him, they can still run some pretty good sets with Paul George and Kelly Oubre and Quentin Grimes. They just have to dip into their bench more with guys like Trenton Watford and Andre Drummond as the big man, Bona as the shot blocker, Justin Edwards. Like they have to play those guys a little more than they would like, or Nick Nurse would like, because he loves to play his starters. Edgecombe's been great. I wonder though if Edgecombe's really going to struggle because I think Jason Tatum's going to guard him.
Okay, and yes, Tatum's back. You have a very overly feisty Boston defense,
Mm-hmm.
just shooting threes. So how will those not be 5 games?
I can see a scenario where they push him to 6 because Tyrese Maxey might just go off in one of these games. The Celtics have had trouble in the past. This was a couple years earlier, different roster, but they struggled with against Trae Young when he was at Atlanta because that's the one thing they've always struggled with, a guard who can go off on them. I think every defense struggles against a guard who can like make unreasonable shots, but Tyrese Maxey is one of those players who could just take over a game. I'll just go on the side of Philly, especially if, say for example, Embiid just decides randomly I'm coming back for the middle of the series. Because if it goes 5 or 6 games, which I don't think is out of the realm of possibility. It was an appendectomy. So that's something where he can actually play his way back into shape pretty quickly. But I would say Boston wins in 6. I wouldn't be shocked if it was a sweep though.
Okay, moving on. We have it used to be the Bulls and the Wizards a good 15 years ago. every year. That was a big rivalry. Now we have New York, Atlanta. Atlanta is not the same. Atlanta, very good on them finding their mojo once they jettisoned their all-in attempt from the preseason. However, New York was built for this. 3 seed, a little low for them, but
Well, they
kind
had
of
to
where they
fight off. They had to fight off. They couldn't fight off Boston for the 2 seed because Boston got Tatum back, which not everybody knew. Not everybody knew that was going to happen. But also, the Celtics played very good defense in the second half of the season. So, and New York struggled, I believe, in either January or February. They had a really rotten month that kind of put them down here. But they're a really, really good team. Their offense is a freaking juggernaut. Like, they are hard to stop shooting
So
wise.
how is this not going to go at most 5 games?
I don't think it will. I think they'll probably beat Atlanta in 5. I think that Brunson's just going to pull out the magic again, and they're going to win one in Atlanta. Remember, too, if I remember correctly, other than the Indiana series, in last year's playoffs, they only lost one playoff game on the road, and that was to Boston when they were already up 3-1. So they're road warriors in the playoffs. They know how to win on the road. So I think they're going to probably go up 3-0 or maybe or be 3-1 and finish it off in the Garden. I hate to say this because I think the Trae Young experience had absolutely run its course in Atlanta, but this is a situation where you kind of need Trae Young. You need a guard who can go out there and take over a game. And even though McCollum has been good for Atlanta, he's a much older player. They're going to turn him over a lot. They're going to hunt him on defense because he's slower. Atlanta's got athletes. That's the one thing Atlanta will always have in perpetuity as long as they keep that core of like Jalen Johnson, Onyeka Okongwu, Dyson Daniels. They got guys who are really good athletes, and they're going to be able to out-jump anybody and out-athlete anybody, but it's not going to matter against New York because their offense is so efficient. They've played in the playoffs multiple years now, and they don't have any crunch time performers as good as what New York has with Brunson and Anunoby. I am curious to see how Mikal Bridges looks, though, because he's had a really up and down year.
Okay, and then rounding it off, we have the 4 seed Cleveland Cavaliers, which, I mean, the beginning of the year, first half, 3 quarters of the season, they were kind of cursed. We didn't know what was wrong with them. So then they decided to go all in on the
They traded
all-in
Garland,
machine and get Harden, which we'll see how it goes. However, they're going in against a good for them for making it and being a 5 seed and being that high, but I don't even expect 5 games out of this.
I actually see 6 here because I think Toronto's defense might, and remember too, they play well on the road because no road team likes to go to Canada. None of them. And so I always give a little bit of an edge to Toronto. Not saying that they're like invincible at home. They've gotten blown out at home a couple times, but I feel like the defense and the veteranship of Toronto, might pull through, is going to help them out a lot and keep them in games. There's been the reports about Emmanuel Quickly with his, I think it's his hamstring. We're not sure about his availability. They're being very quiet about it. Ingram's been great. The problem with Ingram, and I saw this in New Orleans, is that he has really underperformed in the playoffs before. He's also overperformed in the playoffs as a Pelican before. So it's kind of hard to guess what you're going to get out of him. Barnes is terrific, but he's not a great shooter. And then you got, I'm trying to think of the other guy, the other pillar that they kind of have in their starting lineup, Jakob Poeltl, just a really good player.
See, now if you're saying Jakob Poeltl's a pillar and that you're just,
well, against Jared Allen has played really well since Harden's come in, because Harden, that's Harden's game. He loves that 2-man pick and roll game where he lobs it to the big. Him and Mobley and Jared Allen. The moment that Harden came in, Mobley and Allen had high, like their efficiency went way up. I want to see a series where the pressure is. This sounds nuts, but I want to see a series where the pressure is off of Donovan Mitchell to be forced to make the shots, and maybe James Harden can take the pressure off of him. Does that make sense?
kind of.
Because James Harden's always been labeled, and rightfully so, as a playoff choker, but he also has been able to perform in the playoffs when asked to as a point guard. So maybe Don Mitchell won't feel like maybe he won't try to overcompensate, is what I'm trying to say. And for Toronto, you kind of have to do that because they're going to play their 5-man lineup, and they're good from 1 through 5 when all their starters play. Now, again, if Quickly doesn't play, different story. Now you got to play Colin Murray Boyles and Mamu and all those other guys. That's going to be tough for Toronto.
Okay.
I'll say
But
that it goes 6 games because
I am surprised you're picking a close
I think they're
one
going to
on that
rush
one.
Quickly back, and they're going to play some of their bench, and there might be some guy off the bench like Grady Dick or Mamu that's going to overperform, and they might surprise Cleveland. Cleveland also needs a little bit of they need a challenge. They need someone in the playoffs to really punch them in the face to wake them up.
Okay. And moving out in the West, we will start with the defending champions, number 1 seed Oklahoma City. How will this not be a sweep?
I
I'm
think
not
it
going to
is
go
a
5 games against
I I think it
Phoenix.
is a sweep. I like Phoenix. Their defense is very good. The Devin Booker centric offense doesn't always work for me. Dylan Brooks he messed up his hand and he's back and he's sort of played back to his regular like the way he was playing before the injury. So that's good for them. But Oklahoma City matches up like there's just no way. Every time the Suns play the Thunder roll them over. I just don't see a scenario where it doesn't happen. I see a sweep here. Um, the only thing is the one thing that the Thunder do that is a weakness on their defense is that they give up a lot of they allow a lot of threes, and that's something that Phoenix is really good at. So there's a possibility that Phoenix wins one of those games at home, but I'll just go with the sweep by the Thunder. Like, who's going to stop Shea? Who's going to guard him? Grayson Allen? Jalen Green? No, that's not going to work.
All right, fair enough. Moving on. The number 2 San Antonio Spurs facing back in the playoffs, giving up their first round draft pick to do so. The
Mm-hmm.
Portland Trailblazers, 5 games. Tell me why I'm wrong. You could say, yeah, the Spurs, maybe their regular season good, not, but this is the Trailblazers we're talking about here. This isn't much of a
Yeah, they're not an awesome team for sure. They were in the bottom in 3-point field goal percentage and field goal percentage. They really rely. You probably saw that in the play-in game that they won on the road, by the way, against Phoenix, where they really rely on Denny Avdia to just go to the hole, get free throws. They rely on Donovan Clingan inside to make to get defensive stops in the paint when they give up penetration. And then Jeremy Grant, they rely on him a lot also to like make corner threes, just sort of get a tough basket here and there. I really like Shaden Sharp. I hope this is also the first opportunity for Sharp and Avdia to perform in the playoffs. So I want to see how they look against San Antonio, though. Every offense looks bad against the Spurs because of Wembenyama's presence. And now you have a team that's in the bottom in 3-point and field goal percentage playing against a team whose defense makes everyone look bad. So I can see low scoring here. You might see games where Portland doesn't crack 100. I'll go with 5 because I can see Portland squeezing out 1 after going down 3-0.
that's why I always say 5.
Mm-hmm.
I give 1 at home, maybe a game 3, just sort of.
I think the Spurs will have trepidation in the playoffs for sure. I mean, this is the first time this version of the Spurs has been in the playoffs with Wembanyama, De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, all those guys. They've had a great year in the regular season, like you said, but there will be an issue for them. There will be a come to Jesus moment. I don't think it's going to come against Portland, though. I think it might be the next round where
That's the next round. Yeah, that's when I'll start taking this seriously and
right.
um and whatnot. So okay, moving on. Now this might be I don't know if it's going to be a difficult take, but tell me why the Nuggets aren't just going to win in 5. On paper, this looks like a classic 7-game matchup, but just from watching Minnesota all year long, we know they just are going to falter in the fourth quarter. They're just going to have stupid plays. They can be up and they're just going to go right back down. So how are
Mhm.
they not going to squander all these? Because they look good, but just I don't know whether it's just coming out of halftime, they can't make adjustments, or Denver is just extra good at it, or they kick it into the extra gear at the end. But how is Minnesota going to make this a series?
Yeah, like their pace is actually faster than people expect, and everyone knows that the Nuggets work at they play at warp speed on offense. Defensively, they try to slow you down. They're just not a great defensive team. They're just they were like last in blocks and steals. They're not an athletic defense at all. They try to get stops. They try to they you'll sometimes see a good defensive play out of guys like Cam Johnson and Peyton Watson's hurt. So that was something that hurt their defense too. But the offense is out of control good. They were the best, most efficient offense in the league. For Minnesota, to flip back to what you were asking, they will have to, they will have advantages because offensively, points per game wise, because of their pace being so fast, they can actually get some points on Denver's morose defense, but their efficiency is not as good. That's what I think is their problem. Like they look good on paper, but then when you watch them and you see how many 3-point attempts they get, how many times they get to the free throw line, it's sort of middle of the pack. They don't do anything that really stands out, and they go back to the same routine that sort of doomed them in other series, which is, okay, Anthony Edwards, we need you to make a play. Jaden McDaniels is in foul trouble. Naz Reid's not making his threes. We're going to go with Julius Randle, who's not a 3-point shooter, and he's just going to try to eat up the paint. And Rudy Gobert is a non-offensive weapon. So, but the problem is you need Rudy in the paint in order to get stops in crunch time. So you're like playing 4-on-5 on offense. And that's really what I think that's one of the things that's always bogged them down. I think the Sumu being added has been helpful. My problem with the Sumu is that he's never really been in a position where he's played in the playoffs. So he's going to chuck up some really bad shots. And Denver kills you in transition. Because they're just going to get open threes and Jokic is going to look up and get a secondary break going. All that to just say, Minnesota's offense will be able to score a ton of points on the Nuggets. I see high scoring in all these games. The problem is in the back half of these games, the second half, when Jokic really starts to cook and he starts to get those triple doubles and those 30, 20, 10 games that he always pulls off, can Minnesota handle the Avalanche? That's defensively, can they handle the Avalanche? That's the biggest issue. I think the series will be competitive. I think Denver's going to struggle on the road. They always do.
So you think it's going to go 6? I
think 6 or 7. I think 7's possible.
I said on paper it should look like it goes, but just watching Philly, they just don't pass the eye test and always seem to have them just fall short at
Minnesota?
The end.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
so that's why I'm like, it looks like it should go 7 the way these teams are built, but Denver always finds a way to
I did read an
out.
interesting note saying statistically, if you look at like the teams that have won titles, Minnesota is one of the ones that only fits a certain criteria. So people just think they measure up in terms of like the stats. They measure up. When you watch them play, though, it's just, I like their team though. Kyle Anderson as a late addition was great. Mike Conley has fallen off a cliff, so they really needed Anderson and Bones Highland to play well. Terrence Shannon, I think, has a future, and he'll get more playing time this time around. And DiVincenzo is a nice 6-man, so they have a good core. It's just, and they played 2 years ago, but I mean that was with Towns. That was a different cast and crew from Minnesota, so it's hard to really gauge based off of their matchup 2 years ago. I'll still say it goes 7. I'll say Denver wins the series, though. I think the home court is important in this situation.
All right. Now, finally, wrapping this up, we'll flip the script on you a little bit. We have the 4-5 seed. We have the Lakers Rockets. Tell me how this won't go 7. You have a undermanned Lakers team with LeBron James. You're going to have all the conspiracy NBA refs. We need LA to move on so we can.
The Lakers always
LeBron.
Get free throws. They've historically always gotten free throws.
You have an unorthodox style Houston with a coach people are slowly souring on. You have a Durant trade they went all in for that they're slowly souring on. So how does this not go 7?
Well, the only way it doesn't go 7 is if the bench, and I'll say this for JJ Redick, I do think he's a fairly clever coach. Like the way I give credit to the way he was able to bring back Marcus Smart from injury and Luke Kennard in a trade and was able to use them really effectively from the get-go, to the point that they had a really good month of March before the Luka injury. Luka, the likelihood, I mean, you could put a number of your own on it. I would say 60-40 he comes back. He's right that he plays in the series. Would you go lower than that?
If it goes 7, I can see that. If it goes,
Reeves, I don't think so. That's a torn oblique. I don't think he'll play. He might play in the second round if they get that far. But yeah, Luka, I think it's possible. But what I was gonna say is, if the bench of the Lakers can step up, guys like Jared Vanderbilt, Jackson Hayes, who shoot a high percentage because they get all these pick and rolls from Luka. If LeBron can just fit in at point guard, be selfless, and try to get those guys like Rui Hachimura and Smart and Kennard and try to pop them open for shots, they're going to have a chance, because the Rockets are a good team, and their offense is really good, especially with offensive rebounding, but they're not a deep team. They are not a deep team. Once you get past Tari Eason, all you got is like Josh Okogie and Aaron Holiday. And Clint Capella is like a shell of himself. So you really, really need the starters to deliver. Their minutes they've logged a ton of minutes in the regular season. They might have PTSD from the fact that they had home court last year and they lost to the Warriors in the first round. So they feel like they might press a little too hard to try to prove that they're good enough and that they should beat the Lakers without Luka. I just see a lot of mind games here. I see a lot of like mental hurdles. LeBron is a master at that. He's good at manipulating referees, getting free throws, all that stuff. And it's an interesting series. I can see it going 7 for sure. I'll go with conventional wisdom, and I'll just go with a Houston 6-game series win, because I feel like that the Houston's going to dominate at home against the Lakers. Obviously, the Houston's got to steal one. They got to steal one in LA.
I too think I think it'll go 7, and I'd like to see Houston win, as I don't want to see any Lakers anything, as I very seldomly.
But they really it really comes down to it usually doesn't in this case. Depth's important in some series and some not so much. In this one, it does. Like, I think the depth of the teams and who can come off the bench and be a hero, that is going to be important in this series.
Okay. So now that we've wrapped up the first round previews, I'm just going to quickly, before we get out of here, ask you one quick question, as we have the NFL draft coming up. We have the New Orleans Saints prime at the 8 pick. What would you like to see?
A cornerback.
From our Saints.
A cornerback. I mean, I would just double. They did well with secondary with Sanker. Get another cornerback. If you draft well at that position, get another one. You can't have too many corners in the NFL now. They were stuck like last year. No, Kool-Aid's been up and down. And the other guys, the other one you mentioned, Riley, he's been solid, but I would not mind having another one. And it doesn't have to be a safety. You can get a safety in the second round or third round that could be an impact player. That's been proven in history.
Yeah, but Caleb Downs is
every mock after the season ended had them getting Jeremiah Love, but now it's looking like he's going to go higher than that. So they might not be in the running to get him.
Every mock is all over. That's why you have some who think they're going to go with Tyson as the home run.
Jalen Tyson, the Arizona State wide receiver, right?
The home run receiver pick over the safe Carnell Tate. You have the Caleb Downs. You have Ruben Bain. I was just trying to see what you...
Didn't it come out that Bain, he was in a car accident where someone got killed?
Yeah, but that was like a year ago, and it was just well-known. And
I know this. I saw him in the playoff, and Ruben Bain was unblockable in the front line.
But his tiny arms...
Yeah, he does have tiny arms.
Okay,
he gets a lot of sacks. But the problem last year is that right before, two things happened. Number one, Carr retired. He literally retired the week the draft happened. And that's why we had to get Shuck, who I think played okay. And then Ramashik retired. And we had to get an offensive lineman. I can't even remember which O-lineman we got. But we had no choice but to get an offensive lineman. We were already weak at that spot, and we lost one of our
Talise Fuaga.
Yeah.
We had to get to replace Ramchick, and then
correct. This year, you have more flexibility. Another wide receiver would not be a bad idea, especially after losing Shaheed. Sorry. I would just go with defense again and go with a secondary player. That's just my take. but I'm not a super duper expert on that one.
All right. Just wondering because there's many different options they could go. So, all
But
right.
I'm excited about this. I feel the first round. I think some of them might go. We talked about how two of them might go 7 games. Second round is going to be real. That's when I mean, it's just like every season. The second round is when it gets really interesting. Where you're like, okay, now we have best on best, but we have to get through the first round.
Yes, we do have to get first through the first round. But anywho, so for Andrew Riche, I'm Adam Murray. Have a good one.
Enjoy the playoffs.